So hip extension is a big thing that I keep talking about and promoting because we spend so much time in a flexed position. But the other part that extends from that is your thoracolumbar junction. So where is that? That is the junction of where your low back transitions to become your thoracic spine or your mid back. So that junction is where you tend to lose extension as well. Mostly because if you are in an anterior pelvic tilt so much, which most of us are, you will correct this excess by flexing here. It's just the way that your body balances itself out. But of course it's never symmetrical, right? So that takes us back to, if you, like I have less mobility in this hip. If I have less mobility here, whenever I'm seated or I'm flexed into both hips, I will tend to deviate a little bit away from that side, probably with a rotation. My body likes to be in midline, so I'm going to shift this way, probably rotate. And so my brain likes to be in the center, so it's probably going to be this way and rotate. So if you wonder why you get all these places that strain and bother you and don't move the way they should over time, is all that compensation. So if you tend to flex here and you have a rotation, you'll notice one side you can't really turn towards and the other side you have full motion. So the aspect of this is, say you're in yoga, you want to do wheel pose, or you want to extend more, or you want to be able to lie on your stomach. What happens is when you lose extension at this level, you do too much of it down here. So any of you who go back and you only feel it here means you're hinging here, causing a shear force because you don't have enough extension up here. Same thing, we should go back to being able to lying on our stomachs, much less being here on our elbows. But if you get a shear force of this because your hip flexors are overactive and you feel pain here lying here, it's a combination of this and because you don't extend up here enough, so you overdo it down here. So we need to compete with that, right? To being able to lie on our stomachs or to being able to work out safely where you don't overhinge here. So what are some things that you can do? You could lie on a foam roller where you have to be super careful though that you're in the right spot. So if I lie at a foam roller, I have to make sure it is that exact junction over the foam roller, and I would learn to lie here over time. But I would also have to make sure I don't arch my back. I have to hold it from arching and lie. So that can be trickier. You can do things during the day, probably a bit more safer like this. I would make sure my butt is all the way back so I cannot arch my back. And if the chair back is the correct height on your spine, you could do extensions where you don't let excess anterior pelvic tilt occur here, and you could promote that. When you work out, you could make it so you're in hip extension, but not arched into an anterior pelvic tilt. So you would tuck. And I kind of do my tricep extensions where one, it stretches my lats and triceps like this, but I add a bit of extension here. And you know you're doing it right because you don't feel it here, but you feel like you're thrusting the base of your rib cage up. And then I'll come up, I kind of let the weight pull me back this way, and then I'll correct and pull up. Mixing this motion into your day, even in the shower. If I'm standing there, I'm in a neutral pelvis. When I have to dip my head back, I'm careful I hold it here, and I try to dip back from here. Whatever I can mix into my normal day of getting this extension, and then when I'm watching TV or whatever, I will try to be this way. And when I do some extensions, I make sure I'm pushing through the base of my ribs instead of letting it happen all through here. It's just as important to get hip extension back as it is to get extension at your thoracolumbar junction and to restore equal rotation there.